This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome. We're an award-winning show dedicated to empowering women in every profession through inspiring stories and expert insights. No topic is off limits on our show. We power women on the road to success with expert and celebrity interviews and information you need. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Kathy.
We haven't covered this topic extensively on our show, but we felt that there was a need for our listeners. It's going to be a topic that may be triggering to some people, so we want to let people know before we begin. The topic is grief. Grief is something we all go through at different levels and different times during our lives. It's something many people don't talk about and don't fully understand for those going through it. It can be crippling. We don't often find the support system or understanding we need from others when we're grieving. It can seem like we've fallen into an abyss that we can't escape. Dr. Birgette Tan has helped over 25,000 people successfully rediscover peace of mind and joy after grief. Dr. Tan is a certified grief specialist who's personally experienced many types of grief herself. She can relate to her clients and help them release the various dimensions of grief and finally thrive again. Dr. Tan is with us today along with Alyssa David, who suffered profound grief in her life and wants to participate in our discussion as we explore the various stages of grief and how to live again. Welcome, Dr. Tan and Alyssa. We appreciate both of you being on our show. Kathy, I wanted to throw it to you because you know Alyssa.
I do. I just want to mention that I met this wonderful, beautiful light in the world in 2021, I think. In 2020, at Christmas, I had lost my best friend. She died in my house of heart failure. And I had begun dating this fellow, and his name is Wayne. And I met Alyssa through Wayne. And she had just lost a baby girl, and she had previously lost a son. And we connected through our grief. And the minute, from my perspective, Alyssa, anyway, the minute our eyes connected, there was a profound connection. And I really believe the universe had us meet through that fellow. Because as soon as I met Alyssa, I ended up not dating Wayne anymore. But I've continued on my friendship with this wonderful woman who is now doing so well throughout the grief, even though she had a lot of grief. But so I wanted to do this show to bring in Dr. Tan as well as Alyssa and myself. And I'm sure, Shelley, you have your own grief. So it's a very sensitive topic, but I think it's an important topic.
It is.
And I think this show will help a lot of people out there. So thank you, Alyssa and Dr. Tan, for showing up.
Yes, absolutely. This is a conversation that needs to be talked about. I think people do avoid it because it's painful.
It's very painful.
Yeah. Dr. Tan, why do you think people avoid grief? It seems like when people are going through it, you hear things like, well, you need to move on, that sort of thing. People will initially be very empathetic. Gee, I'm very sorry for your loss. People don't just get over these things. Sometimes it can linger for a lifetime.
Thank you so much for the question, Shelley. And it's an honor and a delight to be with you here today, as well as with you, Kathy and Alyssa. And I want to take a moment here to acknowledge Alyssa, and Kathy. My heart goes out to you both for your losses, and also for both of you to share your experience. Thank you for being here, Alyssa. Grief is a very private and personal matter, and it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to share our experience, and even more courage to share our feelings and what we have been through. So thank you so much, and huge kudos for both of you. Thank you for sharing that. And back to the questions, what do people avoid grief? And we notice people in the society, in most of the time, for many cases, people seems to be empathetic at the beginning, says, I'm sorry and this and that, but then they disappear, and then they kind of many people expect us to kind of, or even tell us straight front, right, get over it, or move on, or something like that. Anybody ever that happen? Right. And so I said at the beginning, the majority of grief people are there for us. And the reasons I said that is there are actually plenty of grief that are also not supported even at the beginning. There are more than 40 different causes of grief. And I just want to take the moment here to share that the true definition of grief, to acknowledge anybody who experienced this and not being recognized. The definition of grief is the unsettling feelings caused by a change, a loss, or unmet hope. And in terms of change, let me ask anyone listening, including the panel, do you know anyone who has not experienced any change, say in the last 3 years?
Absolutely not. The past 3 years have been nothing but turmoil across the world and lots of loss and grief.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hope unmet could be, okay, you know what? We thought everything seems to be upside down now in 2020, and well, things seems to be moving forward, and so we hope, many of us hope, okay, you know what? It'll be better, the economy will be better, and the work will be better, and maybe somebody learns something about something to make things better, and then depending on where you live, at least here in the U.S., the next thing you know is prices, even just to buy groceries or gas, is like skyrocketing. And you're like, what? I thought things going to be back to normal or better or something. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful example. And so so anyone who experienced any of the grief, the outside the big four that's commonly recognized, which is loss of loved one, the death, divorce, diagnosis, and job loss, any of the other experience, whether it is hope unmet, it's change, my heart goes out to you. I'm extending much kind love and supportive energy to you. And why do people seems to kind of be there for us at the beginning, and then they as fast as possible seems to disappear? Well, one thing I would say is grief is not a fun subject. It's not a happy topic that we want to sit and talk and on and on. And so it's human natures to not be in an uncomfortable situation. Who wants to be in uncomfortable situation? And then many of us don't know what to say when somebody is grieving. So much so, I actually teach companies and businesses and individual on what to say and not to say when someone is grieving, such that you don't offend the person even more or causes them to become more upset. And then this is something that's available. Anybody wanted it, just email me. I'm happy to provide it. But it's many of us don't know what to say, so kind of we feel awkward. We know what to say. The first one, it's kind of like, as a society, we know that okay, when somebody is grieving, it's safe enough for us to say ABC. But then after that, we don't know what to say. We don't know how to behave, and so nobody wants to be uncomfortable or feeling awkward. And then the other part of people also feel seems to be there, and then they sometimes you even feel like as if people avoiding us. Some of us who has experienced grief, kind of like people like avoiding us, and that's a lot of time. Given the definitions of grief just now, most of us has experienced something. Maybe not in the forefront of your mind, maybe not in your conscious mind. But when we are in a situations where we are interacting with somebody who are grieving, a lot of time that touches the deeper part of us. sometimes we don't even know what it is, but you just kind of like some people who are family member, friends later say to me, yeah, it just kind of make me feel squirmish. Make people feel squirmish, uncomfortable, uneasy deep inside. And most of us not here to have the awareness to say, oh, let me go and check in myself. It's much more easier to say, hey, let me get out of this situation as fast as I could.
Yeah, I think that people have avoidance in these situations, maybe because they don't want to offend or make the person who's grieving feel worse, or maybe they're afraid of their own grief.
Alyssa, did you find that with people in your circle, that they were uncomfortable around you?
Yeah, for sure. I had a best friend who didn't even come around. Like, she didn't even send me flowers or anything.
Oh, wow.
And she actually went out of her way to completely avoid my life. And it was quite hurtful. And fast forward, we're not friends anymore for like other reasons. But I think it actually goes back to what Dr. Tan is saying about having like stuff inside that you're not facing, like stuff that you don't realize is underneath. And I think that's like probably something that was going on with her. Like she didn't know how to support me. And something else that I find really interesting is, even though that I've lost two babies and I've been through grief in like many other areas of my life, I still don't know what to say to someone who's grieving.
Yeah.
It is uncomfortable. We don't know how to support people who are grieving, do we, Dr. Tan?
That is very true. It's in general, it's one of those that it's not an easy situations to start with. So all of us who are endeavoring our best to be there for somebody who are grieving, firstly, just know that it is not an easy situation, because every griever's different, every feeling's different. And not only that, for many people who are grieving, it's like every hour or sometimes even every minute is different, particularly early in the stage of grief. People come to me. I do these live grief tips, grief chats once a week, where anybody and everybody allowed to welcome to participate and join. And people come to me and say, I'm worried, and sometimes, unfortunately, their healthcare professionals also make them worry, because one moment they feel this, and the next hour they feel that. One moment they are okay, and the next one they seems like they're hearing things, and then the next moment they feel. But that is grief. Grief is an amalgam of feelings, and also not only that, grief also affect us beyond our mind. Grief affect us in our heart very much. Grief actually mostly about our heart, much less about our mind. And that's why we sometimes could say, okay, you know what? I understand that I'm supposed to be doing ABC, but I just can't make myself do that. But even so, grief get cellularized or somatized. Many of us feel when we're grieving that we feel it in our body. We literally feel our chest hurting, our stomach hurting, break out with skin rashes or some kind of illness, immune problem and muscle problem and so forth. So grief are all those, and so it is something that is very complex and make it very challenging for anyone who is not experiencing it themselves, or even if you are experiencing it, how do we know who the person next to us feeling ABC instead of XYZ?
Very true. So it's something that it's not just in our mind. Our body processes grief as well. So it's something that impacts your entire life. And when people feel like they're stuck, they can't move, they can't do something, it's like they're suspended in time in many ways when they're dealing.
Maybe they don't even recognize it, that it's grief.
That's true.
Yeah, that is very true. A lot of people don't recognize it after the initial state that it is grief. Unfortunately, for many, it's much better nowadays, but up until very recently, and for a good majority of the times, depending on where we are, the primary healthcare professionals, our primary care physicians, and our primary care counselor and therapists do not even recognize that additional part of grief. And like you said, Shelley, people sometimes feel that they are stuck and feel that they are, or some people like feeling like, okay, I'm a little bit better, but there's something still missing. Yeah. And that's because that additional part, which is the part that's in your, let's say when we go to therapy, therapies work very well with our mind. And so we release the grief from our mind, but then we still have it in our heart. And then even when we do that, if your guide, your coach, your counsels is not aware, then it is still stuck in your somatic part, your cells. And also, I'm also and I do energy work as well to help people release grief. It's also even in your energetic field, and so it's very, it's all encompassing, which is because we are, as human, all of us is very complex, right? And so everything is connected.
And certain grief is more profound than others, and it's rather amazing. You may have suffered grief or a loss decades before, and something you remember or you encounter, maybe a picture or something that you find, you're crying just like that loss had happened again.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's stages. Should we discuss the 5 stages of grief?
Yeah, Dr. Tan, do you agree with the 5 stages of grief, or are there more stages than that?
So thank you for that's very great questions that many times people are confused about, and sometimes hurts people as well, the stages of grief. So the stages of grief, if we're talking about the 5 stages of grief created by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, the stages of grief is actually created solely for people who are facing terminal illness. And then it was expanded to in its use as guidance for counsels for people and family members or related who are also experiencing anticipatory grief, which is grief of something that is going to happen. And so the 5 stages of grief really is created for people who are either personally or in the loved ones facing terminal illness. And for some reason and another, it's got taken some, because it's convenience. It's again grief is one of those confusing things, right? And so people are grappling for some guidance, so to say, and then before we know it, everybody take it and try to apply it to everybody else's. Wow. Yeah. And so I have many people who come and say, my therapist said I'm stuck because I wasn't angry long enough. And I say, you did not have anticipatory grief. It's somebody passed away, and no, that's not why you're stuck. And no, you don't have to find ways to be angry. and nowadays we know that even people who are facing terminal illness or loved one facing terminal illness, they don't always follow the stage. They usually still experience them, but they don't always follow the stages in an orderly manner. Sometimes they jump around, or a lot of people spun around really quickly. They kind of like going like that. So the stages is, let's just say, it's a good guidelines, but everybody is different. We're all meant to be different. Your feelings are always valid. Your grief are valid. If you notice that you don't fit in a stage, please don't let anybody else tell you that you're supposed to be A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. Doesn't matter who that person is. Could be your mother, your neighbor, your counsel. You are meant to be you.
So grief is something that people could go through for a very long time, if not a lifetime. Am I correct?
All of us who experience grief here at Alyssa and Kathy, we will notice that grief changed us. Mm-hmm. And that is very true. Now, some people say it's once you're grieving, you grieve forever. That is partially true in that once you grieve, it changed us forever. And for some people, they continue to feel the pain for a very long time or forever. And for some of us, depending on how we are going to allow the change to lead us to, some of us, it is possible. I have helped many people, whether the grief happened 2 weeks ago or 60 years ago, to release the pain and to move through and beyond the grief and to move forward. But yes, we don't have the correct tools and skills to be and at the correct timing as well, then it's something that many people can be so-called trapped in it forever and continue to feel, unfortunately, the pain from the cause of grief.
Would you say, Dr. Tan, that maybe some people try to run away from their grief? Because I've seen people, when they've experienced a profound loss, get really busy doing this, constantly, almost running away from themselves.
That's a really great question. And I would invite anybody, everyone here who experienced grief, to chime in if something that you attempted to do at some point and then realize it's only make you more exhausted.
Yeah.
And the Grief Recovery Institute, one of the many institutions that I learned from, actually has a very fancy term for that behavior, and we call it STERB. And it's STERB, STERB, short term. Yeah, STERB. S as in Sam, T as in Tango, ER, B as in boy, STERB. And it stands for short-term energy releasing behavior. Grief is energy, just as everything else is in this life is a form of energy. And so when we have it, and it's a little bit of it is a survival skill, really, actually. So some people say, oh, people who has experienced grief, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. Or even some grief coaches and even counsel who says, you should be sitting there and feel your grief. Well, it's a little bit of a survival skill. I'm never one to be on a hardcore way, so to say, because people got to do what they got to do. But yes, many people try to get very busy and distract themselves because that helps us to not feel the pain. And sometimes it is to a degree a necessary behavior. So we're not drowned, so to say, because if you are in pain and you kind of like sit there and try to face the pain, but you do not have the proper support and guidance, you can sort of drown, get really depressed and drown. And that's not something we want to happen with you. And so, but the startup is getting very busy is one really good example. And that busy could be anything. Could be suddenly really working a lot, could be partying, could be using certain substance, could be even exercising. I know one person who cannot stop cleaning his house. He never cleaned house. He hated cleaning house. And then he said, I just can't stop cleaning my house. It's like... but yeah, that's partly a survival skill. Now, of course, if we continuing on and keep escaping the feeling, so to say, or attempting to escape the feeling, then it can turn destructive because then we're not facing the truth, and that's what make us trapped in it, and we got busier and busier, or shop more and more, or use more and more substance, and at the end of the day, it's become a destructive cycle.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
If you're enjoying this informative episode of Women Road Warriors, I wanted to mention Kathy and I explore all kinds of topics that will power you on the road to success. We feature a lot of expert interviews. Plus, we feature celebrities and women who've been trailblazers. Please check out our podcast at womenroadwarriors.com and click on our episodes page. We're also available wherever you listen to podcasts, on all the major podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it. Check us out and bookmark our podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other sites. And tell others about us. We want to help as many women as possible. The definition of grief is unsettling feelings caused by a change, a loss, or unmet hope, according to Dr. Birgette Tan, who's a certified life mastery consultant and certified grief specialist. She has a program called Joyful Riches Beyond Grief and Dance Away Sadness. Move beyond your grief. Grief is something we all experience. It comes in many forms, and it can be triggered after a divorce, a death, a health condition, the loss of a job, or even a dream. Because it's an uncomfortable topic, society tends to shun and run away from grief. And people going through it don't have a support system. We're often left alone to deal with persisting grief that goes on for months and even years. It feels like we're in an abyss. Many times we don't always know we're grieving about something. Doctors can't always recognize it to help their patients. Dr. Tan is a former veterinary oncologist who dealt with many situations of grief with her patients' families and in her own life. She offers hope and guidance to finally move out of the darkness of grief and thrive again. She also has guidance for people on what to say and do when another person is going through grief. Kathy, you mentioned you had some questions for Allison, who's here to share some of her experiences with grief with our listeners.
So, Alyssa, having lost 2 children, which is absolutely horrific, what helped you move through or get to where you are today?
So when my son passed away, I went and I stayed at my family's house, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was actually using alcohol as a distraction from my grief. And the only reason I realized how much it was distracting me is because when my daughter passed away, I chose to enter recovery and stop drinking. And when I did, I felt like I felt the pain like so much more. I don't know. It also felt a lot more painful because it was a second child that died. But so that would be like one of the ways that I wasn't healthily handling my grief. But I mean, they say that there's no wrong way to grieve, but I also feel like I might have a wrong way and someone else might have a wrong way, but you only know yourself if you're doing it wrong. Like if you start smoking crack, you're not grieving right. Does that make sense? Like for me.
Right.
And then on the other hand, the thing that worked for me, like something was said earlier by Dr. Tan about some people will feel the pain for a really, really, really long time. And then some people are able to let it go. It just depends on how you're moving through it. If I'm wording that okay. And for me, I had to find purpose. Like I had to find purpose. And so when my son passed away, I actually had stopped using drugs, and I was like a hardcore crystal meth addict all day, every day type of thing for years. And when I found out that I was pregnant with him, I stopped using the day that I found out that I was pregnant with him. So when he passed away, when he was 3 weeks old, I was like, there's no way that I'm going to ruin this. He gave me this gift. I wasn't able to get clean. He gave me this gift. And so I decided that was what good came out of that for me. And so I continued to work towards recovery, which was hard for me because I had relapses and that continued. But then, so when my daughter passed away, which was, again, totally unrelated to addiction or anything like that, my placenta expired early. Also, my son died from SIDS, by the way. He passed away in his sleep when he was 3 weeks old. And then so my daughter, when she passed away, like the day after she died, and so my placenta expired early, by the way, at 39 weeks. So she was a perfectly healthy baby, and she died, which was horrific, by the way. Like, it seems like it won't be so bad if it's a baby, but it is. It's horrible. And I said to my best friend, like the day after she died, I was like, I have no idea what could possibly come out of this, but watch, something good is going to come out of this. And I don't know what it is because I'm in so much pain, but something has got to. And that's how I am as a person. Like, I need to find the silver linings in order to radically accept things. And so I created a silver lining because I couldn't find one. And I was like, the universe must be telling me to quit drinking. Like, I wasn't drinking during my pregnancy or anything, but I was like, what's the one thing that I haven't given up, that I haven't changed? I'm like, if the universe is trying to tell me something, then this is what I'm going to decide it is. And so I chose to stop drinking completely. I didn't think I had a problem with alcohol. And so I just decided, fine, I'll just quit drinking, because my life hadn't really gone anywhere. And I was probably still stuck in my grief because, like I said, I was drinking and I was drinking my grief away. So I was kind of like in that distractive cycle still. And I didn't think that I had a problem with alcohol. So I just decided to write my own positive narrative and just try it. And I quit drinking. And I decided that was going to be the gift that she gave me. And I decided I was going to quit for 1 year and just see how I felt at the end of the year. What have I got to lose? I can get drunk for the rest of my life if I want to after that. And I quit for a year. And at the end of the year, so much had changed in my life. And there was no denying how different my life was. So that's what I decided to take from my daughter passing away.
You're amazing, by the way. Just saying.
Yeah.
That's what works for me. I am very, like, my therapist told me once, she told me, don't try and think your way through things. But that's not really like the best advice, because I'm different than this other person over here. We're all different, right? And for me, it actually does help me to think things through and to process and to go through all of the things and to find all of the silver linings in all the different areas and to just like talk myself through something for ages sometimes.
I have to do that with PTSD. I still to this day have to talk myself through when I get a moment. Yeah. It works.
Yeah. So, yeah, it helps me. Yeah. I do a lot of my thinking and talking to myself while I'm driving.
Dr. Tan, and thank you, by the way, Alyssa, for sharing all of that.
Thank you.
Yes.
You've suffered some profound losses, and it's not easy to talk about these things, but this is helping a lot of people who can identify with this as well. Dr. Tan, do you hear your clients say similar things, what Alyssa's experienced?
Yeah, a lot of people do experience so a couple different things, and congratulations and kudos to you, Alyssa, for tapping into the strength in you, because there are moments when everything's so dark, and it's really tapping into the strength in us that like you said, in your way, it is to find purpose. And I tend to say, what is grief? What if I were to put grief in one way, what would that be? I called grief a grueling rawness invoking emotional fortitude, and that was quite a beautiful fortitude that you display. And so thank you for being such a beautiful example. But yeah, there are people come to me, and sometimes everybody's different, but many people do experience a lot of time our first reaction, so to say, again, being human, we don't like to be in pain, and there are so many misunderstandings about grief in society that we tend to do what we know and do what we're able to escape the pain. And it is very common for people, whether it is using alcohol, whether it is something else, is that the first time people experience grief, they try to run from it. Many people who come to me, actually, they, even if it is for a recent loss, many of them look back and say, you know what, that is so strange. It's like, it's not even so bad that, and I'm in such a mess, and it seems, and what happened is, when by the time they come to me, it's the most recent loss is just the straw that break the camel back. And there was so many other things that happened before that. And yes, for all of us, being able to find purpose, being able to find reasons on why we want to move forward, is definitely something that very helpful. Everybody do it differently, and a lot of people, they come because they're experience panic attack or nervous breakdown, or stuck in their career, or because grief influence our health and our ability to think, stuck in our career, stuck having health problem, physical problem, and all this other thing. But it's something that we all have our different reason to find a purpose to help us move forward, is definitely something that is very helpful as well.
You know, Dr. Tan, grief can be such a roller coaster. I know that I've experienced that. When my father died, I was in my 20s. He was a lot older and all of that, but he was my idol. And I realized after he died, it was like half of me was gone. And it was at that point that I realized I really had a lot of his personality traits. I hadn't realized that before. But I went through denial. I went through a lot of anger. I was angry at the injustice. It's like, why? Why? You know, and I think people deal with that no matter what the grief is. If somebody dies in their life, if they go through a divorce, I mean, that's a tough one. You've spent years with someone you've loved, and all of a sudden that's ripped apart, and then you see them down the street with somebody else. You know, and it just opens the wound all over again. All these different emotions that you go through, it makes it difficult to deal with.
You are absolutely correct. It is a lot of different emotions, and a lot of time it's something happened. Now, anger is one of those things. Sometimes some people feel bad for feeling angry. For many people, they kind of like feel guilty that they feel angry or something, or they feel angry, and then there's somebody pointing that out to them, and it got irritated. But for anger is actually the most common expressions of grief. Many of us not aware of this, but and practically anybody who experience grief experience some form of irritability or anger or something. Even when the grief comes from the passing of a loved one, just like you shared, Shelley, and part of that partly is because anger is an easier and a more common emotions for us to relate than deep grief. And so it's normal and natural to feel angry, whether you're angry at yourself, or angry at the injustice, angry even at the person who passed. And yes, when we talk about divorce is actually a multi-level grief, because if we really look at it, one part of divorce is a loss of the person, a loss of the relationship. even if it's a divorce that you initiate, it's still a loss. And I'm yet to know anybody. And then the other part of divorce is unmet hope. So it's not only you have a loss, like if somebody passed away, we have a loss in that aspect, but also the other part of divorce is quite a bit of an unmet hope. I'm yet to know anybody who get married with an intentions to get a divorce, right? And it's kind of like, oh gosh, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? And all this turmoil of emotions that sometimes it's guilt, sometimes a lot of other emotions, sometimes it's anger. Many times we discover that below the anger is some other emotion. Anger a lot of time is what we call a secondary emotion.
I think we have to give ourselves or allow ourselves time, because it's not going to happen overnight. Grief, I had never really felt grief until my friend died, Tanis, in my house on December 11th, 2020. And I was completely shocked. She was like my soul sister. She was everything to me. And she passed away unexpectedly from heart failure in her room across the hall from my room. And I was just completely devastated. And she left me a gift under the Christmas tree on Christmas morning. I didn't know it was there. And when we went to open the gifts, and I was still in a zombie-like state, I see her. She had left me something, and there's a card on it, and I'll just read it to you. I went and grabbed it. It says, "Dear Kathy, first you did another grueling day shifts, and I wanted to know that your hard work does not go unnoticed by me and many others. I hope you really enjoy your presence. Love, Tanis, your bestie." And then the card itself says, "May you always discover within you the courage and freedom to follow your heart and live your dreams." Well, when I saw that, I lost it. I completely lost it. And I carried that gift around with me because I moved. I sold my house. I ended up, moving to LA, and I carried it around. And the only thing I could do was take the wrapping off, and then I would crumble again and just cry. And 3 weeks ago, I was because I have this card open, pinned on my board, on my motivational board above my computer, and I read it. I have her picture. Her and I had attended a concert together, so I have the picture, and then I have this card. So I'm reading this card, and it suddenly hit me. I'm like, oh my God. Like when it says, "Hope you really enjoy your presence. Love, Tanis, your bestie." I'm like, I've been denying myself something that she so lovingly and thoughtfully picked out for me because of my own inability to work through it, as you say. So that realization enabled me to go get the gift and actually open it and use it, and it's almost as if I've been set free in a sense, if that makes sense. And it's this beautiful board, dry eraser board that says "Dream Big Always," which is the name of my book. And so now, since I've been able to do this, I feel like I've achieved another stage in my grief, if that even makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alyssa, has that happened with you at all? Or because I know now you have another daughter and you have this wonderful cookie business, which is amazing, right?
Yeah. I can definitely say that I can relate to that story. The thing my brain goes to my grief for my mother, because like my mom's still alive, but like she left when I was young and she's not healthy and all that. So like I didn't even realize when I was younger that I was actually grieving her, or should have been grieving her, or whatever, and I was just like numbing it out. And then when I got older, I started to realize how much it affected me, and I actually was going through like the grieving process. And I had come to a realization that, so I always felt like I was so connected to her because she's my mother. She's the other half of me. I was born from her, right? And so I always felt like that connection, that strong connection that I was craving, right? That grief, all of that. I thought that I was connected to this addict. And so I thought I was supposed to be like her. I was supposed to be an addict. I wasn't destined for good things. I was just supposed to kind of end up like how she is, because I could feel it in my soul that I was supposed to be like her. Now, I came to some sort of realization which resulted in just the floodgates. Like, just I cried and cried and cried profusely for hours when I came to the realization that it wasn't the addict that I was feeling connected to. It was her true, like, you know, her inner child that I was feeling connected to. It was that innocent little being that she once was, that she has deep down, because the addiction is only a symptom of the stuff that she's been through. And so when I came to the conclusion, when I was able to come to that realization, which was putting down my rose-colored goggles, or whatever the saying is, like, I had a vision that I believed in for so long. When I opened my mind and realized that I was just projecting my views onto her, and then furthermore, I was an addict and doing all these things that I thought that I was meant to be doing because I was holding on to something for so long, and I wasn't dealing with the grief, and I wasn't seeing things clearly, if that makes sense. And so once I realized that this person who is so toxic was once like an innocent baby and an innocent child that nobody had hurt yet, and somebody who deserved to laugh and deserved to smile and deserved to have a good life, when I realized that was such a pivot moment in my life and in my grief and in my recovery and everything, because I was able to rewrite the ending, because I wanted to be connected to her. But now I realized the only way for me to do that was to take the best care of myself as I possibly could, because then I could fulfill the things she didn't get to have. She didn't get to be happy. She didn't get to be loved. She didn't get to love herself. I don't know. I feel like I totally like rambled onto like a super deep story, and I hope that it related to grief.
Yes,
because it was
absolutely
it was a huge part of my grief process with my mother.
Thank you, Alyssa, for sharing that.
That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful, and I thank you both. That is just such a lovely example of what is it, or even why do we want to be able to move through and beyond our grief? Because some people, some people say, so why don't I'm just, what's wrong with me being, people call it stuck, or what's wrong with me staying in here? What's wrong with me staying in the pain? Why shouldn't I stay and cry every day? And firstly, it's not a right or wrong answer. If that's what feels best for you, then that is what is for you. There is no right or wrong answer in grief or when to move forward. But I love that, because to me, if people say, and some people say to me, why the heck do you work with grief? Isn't that just like so doom and gloom? Are you like depressed all the time? I'm like, what? No. Actually, it's the opposite. Because what is the other end of being able to move through and beyond grief, to be able to move forward, not get over, not move on, but to move forward, to move through and beyond, which is what you said, and what you both say, Kathy and Alyssa, which is being able to love the person and appreciate and connect to the person even more. With you being able to be, to really, with Kathy, being able to do what it is that your friend would have loved for you to do, which is to look at her in good memory, to enjoy her gift instead of being in so much pain that you can't stand looking at it. Because we all want to be remembered in a beautiful way, not with pain, and to be able to connect to somebody's truth and to create something beautiful out of the experience, which is what you share, Alyssa. It's like when you are able to process and move through and beyond, move through that grief, you're able to see your mom's truth. And now going from there, connecting even deeper, loving even more. Moving forward from grief is to really to be able to live again, to love even deeper, and connect and and create something good for in honor of them and for you and for the bigger as you're doing that, Alyssa, big kudos to you, because as you're doing that, whatever that you do in honor of her and her truth, it's bring good to other people too.
Very profound. Dr. Tan, it seems like people have, as they move through life, the way we process grief is heavily influenced by our past experiences and maybe other underlying emotions. I mean, that's kind of what some of what I'm getting from you. And you certainly guide people through grief in a different way from what I'm understanding here, so they can seek joy. We have about maybe 9 minutes left, and I want to be able to talk a little bit about that to see whether there's some stages, some steps that people can take that are listening on how they can move through their grief and certainly reach out to you too.
Thank you, Shelley. Yeah, and so in terms of how we process grief, it's our experience, and our experience include the society that we are in, because we're all influenced by the society we are in. And certain society, we were basically told not to feel our feelings. That's unfamiliar, and this is in many different society. While I people work with me internationally, I work remotely with my grief coachings, and some people from certain society, for instance, people in Italy, in Europe, certain European community. One example being Italy, the Italians are allowed to feel their feelings more. And so it's actually better for them when they are experiencing grief, because like one gentleman said, oh, when something happened, we're allowed to cry. We sit here and we cry in the circle and we hug and we holler and all these things. And so, yes, how we process grief very much influenced by our own life experience and our society as well. And in terms of how people move through, what can they do as they experience grief? Grief is one of those that many times people not aware, and this is our society. There's so many misunderstanding about grief in the society, but grief is one of those that afflict us, not in addition to our mind, it is also very much afflict our heart. If we feel when we're grieving, where it hurts, most people say it's in their chest, it's in their heart. Some people feel it in their head too, but usually just somewhere in their heart, in their body, because grief afflict us in our mind as well as in our heart. And even more, it is also somaticized or cellularized. So in other words, it get into your physical body. It's why grief is now and more now that it can cause all kind of physical illness. People say, oh, I suddenly got skin rashes or nonstop migraine, back problem, leg problem, you name it. Heart problem, internal organ problems, and infections and so forth. And then it's also, as part of what I do to help people, I also help people with energetically. We can even see it, that it got into your energetic field very, very much. And with all those, how do people move through and beyond grief? In general, like with everything else in life, really, the first one is to acknowledge and honor ourselves, to keep in mind that everybody different, everybody has different timing. So please do not let anyone tell you what to feel, how to feel, or when to do what. We all have our own internal timing. Don't give grief time, because grief not going to get better on its own. Time does not heal grief. Time causes grief to become complex and complicated. But give yourself time to acknowledge, to honor, and then to receive the support that if you try, let's say you read some book, you go to a therapy, and then you say, I'm better, but I'm not 100%. Please keep looking. Please keep searching. As you mentioned, Shelley, I work comprehensively. I work where I address the part of grief that's in the mind, in the heart, in the cellular part of your body and energetically. It's kind of like almost like creating a beautiful, baking a beautiful cake, so to say. You have all these ingredients. And sometimes we use one or the other, but if we feel that there is something still there that for us to be able to continue to move through and move forward, then please please reach out, look out there to allow support such that you are able to, as we just say, to be able to be at the place of you actually feel even deeper love, even more joy, to you personally kind of live again in an even better way, the way Alyssa shows us here.
I think that's important to talk about, because there's a lot of resources nowadays available for people who are hurting. And a lot of them are free. I mean, some of them are not, but some, so if anybody out there is, going through a really rough time right now, I know on my personal page, I have a lot of resources available for mental health, but I mean, just Google, Dr. Google. But there's things out there, places, people, reach out, call someone. Don't sit in your pain and suffer alone. Because there's others out there who would be able to help you move through it, as you say.
It's so important.
It's so important.
Dr.
You can
Tan,
even reach out to me, on my anything. Just do something.
Yeah, and anybody here who listen for our listener here, if you or your loved one experiencing tough time, firstly, my heart goes out to you. And as an honor to Shelley and Kathy and Alyssa here, if you mention this podcast, this talk show, or any of our names here, I will be more than happy to extend a complimentary initial consultation. So if you like, I don't know if there's something else I can do, or am I what have you, feel welcome to connect with me directly, and I'm happy to extend complimentary initial consultation as long as you mention this show.
That's
Thank
wonderful,
you very much.
Dr. Tan. Yes, thank you. Where do people reach out to you?
So a couple options to do that. First, you can reach people can connect with me through my website, and that is joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com. Joyful riches like full spectrum rich life. Joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com. You're welcome to also connect with me directly, actually, to email me at drtanforgrief@gmail.com. Doctor is abbreviated as DR, so DRT as in Tango, AN as in Nancy, for grief@gmail.com. Any of those, I'm happy to chat with you if you want to learn more, to benefit from the complimentary initial consultation, or to learn more about the grief chat, the grief chat that I do and open to public complimentary once a week.
This is wonderful, Dr. Tan. This is valuable insight for our listeners. Again, what is your website, Dr. Tan?
That is joyfulrichesbeyondgrief.com.
I really appreciate this. Thank you, Dr. Tan and Alyssa. I hate to cut you off. We have to kind of wrap it up. This has been a very profound discussion.
Hasn't it? For me, it's been eye-opening and much needed, actually. Yes. How about you, Alyssa? Has this been helpful for you?
It's been great. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and open and willing to share.
Yes.
That's a big step.
I could talk for days.
You've really, I think you've helped a lot of people, Alyssa. Thank you.
I hope so.
You've given them hope. And Dr. Tan, that's what you're doing with people too. This is wonderful.
Thank you. And yes, please know that there is help. Even if you feel you've tried everything, there is still help. So when there is help, there is hope. And yes, thank you so much, Alyssa and Kathy and Shelley. It's such an honor and a delight to be with you today.
Vice versa. Thank you. We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. On our website, we also have a selection of podcasts just for women. There are a series of podcasts from different podcasters. So if you're in the mood for women's podcasts, just click the Power Network tab on womenroadwarriors.com. You'll have a variety of shows to listen to anytime you want to. Podcasts made for women. Women Road Warriors is on all the major podcast channels like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, and others. So check us out, and please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.
Turn your dial to find the frequency of the past.
Captain Advice.
Where the classic stories of mysteries, sci-fi, thrillers, and suspense are found waiting to be heard once again.
Another case for Nick Carter, Master Detective.
You'll find a variety of those stories here, in their original form, where each episode takes you to another place or time.
The Man of Bronze, Doc Savage.
But only when you find the mystery frequency. Available everywhere.
The Shadow knows.